Hello, YGO Strats here. We've got big news this week coming from a leak big enough that it deserves its own video and not just 4 sentences and a joke from the update. Granted, at this moment, nothing here is official. Konami has not formally announced this, but multiple OTS stores have reportedly received emails that have been leaked telling locals about alternative formats that could be played in place of just the advanced format. Now, advanced format, if you are unaware, is Yu-Gi-Oh! The game that follows the current ban list and uses all the cards currently released. It's the one you know and love. Or hate, I don't know. But if you hate it, I don't know why you're watching these videos. This is a pretty big deal. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has always lacked alternative formats, and from what we know of the leaks, it seems they've got something for just about everyone's tastes with these. The leak tell us of 5 potential formats, called Time Wizard, Heart of the Underdog, Common Charity, Deckmaster, and Rivalry of Warlords. You know, all fittingly enough named after actual cards barred Deckmasters. That's not really news, it's just kind of a fun fact and something that I find to be pretty neat. Time Wizard's the first format I mentioned and the first one I'll go over, and it's the most similar to other alternative formats that you've probably heard of. You've probably heard of GOAT format, you may have heard of things like Edison or Hat format, and Time Wizard will basically be that thing. Your OTS store will decide on a particular format or event or whatever, and you'll play with the card pools that they had at that time and under the formats and rulings that they had at that time. Now, the one that they mention specifically in the email would be the US National Championship in 2005, which broadly most people can safely interpret to mean GOAT format. And it could be anything. It doesn't just have to be that 2005, it's just wherever Time Wizard lands, as it's put. This is really interesting and I think really fun. It gives you a chance to understand things that you might not be aware of in the current game. Take, for example, priority, first turn player drawing, or things like only being one field spell on any side of the field. If I play a new one, my opponent gets destroyed, vice versa. Those are really neat intrinsic parts of the games back in the day that maybe modern players haven't experienced but can now get to at official sanctioned tournaments, which is just awesome. Retro formats are super fun and I really recommend playing them with friends if you can, if nothing else. A few of my buddies have decks from 2011 that we like to fool around with, and it's just a blast. It also validates my Lavalval chains and things like that I've got sitting around, which is fantastic because at one point in time that card was like $40 and it was really cool to have it. And, you know, it'd be really cool to use it and not have it just be like binder swag. The second format mentioned is Heart of the Underdog, and for all you meta game haters out there, this might be the one for you. In this format, your store would choose certain decks that are deemed too strong for the format and ban them. So top meta contenders like Sword Soul or Fluwandereeze, Lyrilusk, all the big names just wouldn't be allowed to be played in the format at the tournament. This would give a chance for other smaller or rogue decks to shine. Adamancipate, or maybe Blackwing or B-Trooper, you name it. Decks that are competent and can make solid boards and solid plays, but just can't quite keep up with the tip-top Tier 1 threats. In the email, Konami explicitly mentions a focus on more casual tournament for this format, which is something I think a number of players would enjoy. Common Charity is the next one, and for you budget players, it might be your favorite. For anyone who played it in 2018 and has a hatred for Goki as a deck, this format will trigger your PTSD. Call your therapist immediately. In this format, you can only play common cards across your entire deck. The main, the extra, the side, all need to be common. Now, it's not made explicitly clear in the leak if this means the cards have to be common as you're playing them, or if maybe it means you're only allowed to play a card that has had a common printing. So technically you can play any copy of Ash Blossom, but, you know, does it need to be the one from the Salamangreat structure deck, or can it be the secret rares you bought? Can it be the $30 reprint that's Ultra, or the $25 reprint that's the common? Why is that card so expensive? Probably because it's good. Now, this might vary from store to store, in all honesty. I don't know how strict it's going to be. Like I said, it's leaks, nothing's official yet, and it might vary from case to case. Some locals might be okay with you playing an ultra rare copy of a card that came in a common. Others might be like, nope, hard common only. There's also technically the potential for it to be cards that have only been printed in common, which is a number of cards, but not a number of good cards, so I would laugh if that was the case, but who knows? We'll see. As mentioned, Goki is a powerhouse in this format, and you've probably heard at this point that there was a YugiTuber Grand Championship a few years ago, I believe, that did this sort of format where people played either Goki or I think it was Grand Maju Beatdown, so might be a bit of an Unga Bunga format, but that's fun. For any desk bot enthusiasts that are still wandering around, you'll enjoy it too. I see you. Keep it up, man. You're doing great. I'm proud of you. Deckmaster is the next format and is the one that's getting the most attention. Surprisingly, not because it was popular from the anime, but because it is fundamentally broken before launch. That's right, Konami's taking a page out of every AAA game studio's Bible and just broken immediately, just an absolute mess of a format. This format would allow each player to select a deck master, which can be any monster in the entirety of the game. The deck master will start the game outside of the deck, but its effects will be applied as if it were face up on the field. It can be normal summoned at any time that the player would be able to normal summon, and if you're playing with a deck monster that is a high level monster that needs tributes, or perhaps an extra deck monster, you won't need to tribute summon. You'll just be able to plop it down like it's a normal summon. Lastly, if the deck master is destroyed, you lose the game. Now, immediately, people pointed out that this is just asking to be abused, and provided just a laundry list of monsters that would make this format a nightmare. How about Dragoon for a free negate every turn? Or maybe you'd prefer Naturia Exterio, just so you never even need to discard for it. How about a barrier statue, so that the only thing your opponent can summon are the fire monsters in terms of special summoning. Or maybe you don't want your opponent to special summon at all, in which case you might like Vanity's Ruler, just to make it so only you can special summon and they just don't get to play. And actually, you know what? Speaking of not getting to play, why not have your deckmaster be Last Warrior from Another Planet? No one's summoning this duel. There are endless ways to hold the game hostage in this format, which is just hilarious to me as a concept. But it's also worth noting that the turn player would only lose if the deckmaster's destroyed. This means that presumably if you link it away or use it as tribute fodder or anything of the sort that isn't destruction, you won't lose. So I guess that's just kind of kaiju proofing. That's the one thing I've heard that makes sense. If you can just kaiju and win the game immediately, then it's kind of just kaiju turbo the format. So that's, I guess, a smart enough way to go about it. In all seriousness, though, if you could just decide to not be an ass and use like non-floodgate monsters as deck masters, I do think that there's a chance that this format could be really fun, or at the very least neat. If you choose a more balanced card, something like B-Trooper Scale Bomber, or Battle Wasp Sting the Poison, cards that disrupt the opponent but would require a tribute for you to get that effect, or maybe something like Vampire Sucker, just so you can draw a card every time you special summon from the graveyard, just get some advantage off your plays. Things that offer a more back and forth exchange just for you to gain advantage or offer a little bit more disruption, I think could be really fun, just as long as it's not, you know, blowout cards like Last Warrior from Another Planet. I do have faith that a gentleman's agreement would make this format a lot more fun. And for the truly enlightened, you could have your deckmaster be Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. And then you can just immediately summon it to the field, pop it and another card on your field, and lose the game turn 1 as a means to speedrun your locals. Now that would be a fun format. The last format mentioned is Rivalry of Warlords format. The leaks we have tell us just about nothing. It just says that it would be a fun and easy way to introduce themes that are not commonly played, and that you will, quote, surely want to play. I've seen plenty of speculation about what it'll be. I've seen, you know, people saying you'll be given a deck list to play with, or maybe it'll take more inspiration from Rivalry of Warlords the card, and you'll only be allowed to play certain types, or who knows. We don't really know anything yet. Endless possibilities, I suppose, but an introductory format I think would be a great addition to the game in general. I'm sure a new player seeing 4 different type of extra deck monsters, all with their own summoning requirements and pendulum scales and all the different things going on, can be pretty intimidating. So that would just be a great thing to have to introduce more players to the game in a more relaxed and understandable setting. It's also worth noting that the leak mentions that these formats would be just like other tournaments at your locals. You would pay your entry fee and get your OTS packs and maybe any other potential prizing that you would get, but that they would not outright replace the advanced format tournaments. They would just be another way to play the game, which is fantastic. Variety is the spice of life, and more ways to play the game just means more ways to enjoy it. It's also likely that these formats will be similar, if not outright the same, as the formats we can expect in the upcoming Master Duel game. If Konami wants to draw more players into the game, it makes sense if there's some parity between Master Duel and the real-life game. So if one has alternative formats, the other one should too. So that would be a very safe bet, and I would agree with it. I also won't be shocked if these formats end up receiving their own ban lists of sorts. Lord knows Deckmaster will absolutely need one, and it will be a long list of monsters. Common Charity honestly probably could use one too for Goki, but if nothing else, honestly, I think just a gentleman's agreement of sorts could make a lot of these very fun, and I'm excited to see these grow. Feel free to leave a comment saying which of the formats you're most excited for, which other cards would make Deckmaster a living hell to play in that I didn't mention, because God knows there's plenty, and any other, suggestions. I'm curious as to what you might think Rivalry or Warlords format would be, or just general ways to make these more interesting in a balanced sense. As always, feel free to like and subscribe. This has been your host, YGO Strats.